So here it is finally, Election Day in the United States. Millions of Americans are voting after being canvassed for a year and a half by Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton and others who have collectively spent billions of dollars trying to win their support. Now, barring any unforeseen events, we should have a winner by Wednesday. Throughout this show, I'll be joined by our agitator-in-chief, Craig Copetas. He'll be guiding us through the economics, politics and absurdities of the entire election process. Craig, are you excited? You've seen a lot of these elections.
We're into day 593 of this campaign. Are we done yet?
Well, how many Americans won't be voting? How many are going to just sit on the couch and watch it?
Well, the estimates range from anywhere from 40 to 60 million. Now, very briefly, in 1972, 61.3% of the Americans voted.
Right.
Back in 1884, 75%. Those are the all-time highs. So,
well, we'll see.
This could be higher.
We've got a couple of days and we'll soon find out. OK, let's get to our first report now. We're going to Iowa, a swing state where the Republican candidate is expected to do well, but a Democrat surge is not out of the question. Our senior business producer, Azhar Sukri, is in the heart of that city in Des Moines. Here's his package.
A strong turnout in Des Moines, the state capital of Iowa. Up to the start of voting, all indications had been that Republican candidate Donald Trump would win comfortably. So what is it about his message that's resonating with voters here?
Jobs, definitely for Americans, and bringing some of our manufacturing jobs back home, as well as very, very concerned about where we go with minimum wage.
But even though the latest opinion polls before voting began showed Trump with a strong lead, several said they voted for his Democratic rival, Hillary Clinton.
I definitely don't trust Trump to negotiate trade treaties, and I think Hillary will hopefully get us better deals all around.
I think she would be the best for everyone, not only the other races, but blacks, whites, whatever. I think she'd be the best for them.
I want to see change, period. I want to see civil discourse from both sides, and I want to see honesty. But most importantly, I want to see more jobs. I want to see Americans being able to feed their families. I don't want to see more problems with Obamacare or more regulations from the EPA here in Iowa with farmers. They know what they're doing. I want to see more control put locally.
Trump has been driving home his plan to cut taxes and get tough on American companies that move jobs and profits overseas. Iowa's unemployment rate is below the national average, but wages have not grown as quickly as the rest of the country. Trump's candidacy has fired up the mostly white, rural, blue-collar communities of Iowa. But the Democrats won 6 of the last 10 elections in this state. In this close race, Iowa could play a pivotal role.
Get out there and vote.
Azhar Sukri, TRT World, Des Moines, Iowa.
And Azhar joins us live now. Azhar, you mentioned Trump wants to bring jobs back to America. How does he plan to do that? And do people there take his pledge seriously?
Hello, Matt, from Des Moines in Iowa. Yes, it is a beautifully sunny day. Before I answer your question, I have to say that voter turnout here, apparently, according to a couple of the officials that we've spoken to, has been very high. So, yes, that message that Trump has been putting out throughout his campaign resonating very strongly in this part of America. Some of the measures that he's talked about back in June, he outlined a 7-point plan to bring American jobs back to America. I have to point out, of course, that yes, America has lost a lot of jobs overseas, but it has also created a lot of jobs internally. Over the years, and even since 2008, job growth has actually been pretty strong. But going back to his plan, he's been talking about things like renegotiating the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then, of course, getting really tough on China in so many ways, calling it a currency manipulator and things like that. All of those messages resonating, as I said in the package there, with this largely white, blue-collar, rural and suburban area of
Azhar,
America.
let's just turn to Clinton for a moment. She does keep talking about an economy that works for everyone, not just the people at the top. Words you'd expect from a Democrat, perhaps. But at the same time, you know, she's been giving these secret speeches to Goldman Sachs for huge sums of money, cozying up to Wall Street. How does the Clinton campaign justify this?
Well, Hillary Clinton, as early as October, just in October, said that about 90% of the money that has been received by the Clinton Foundation, for example, goes to charitable organizations. But for the most part, that issue has been something that she has sidestepped. Of course, Trump has been hammering her on that issue, but also on things like the email issue, her use of a private email server. These issues have really been at the heart of this campaign, which we are now at the end of, and we are now on voting day here in the United States in Iowa.
Azhar Sukri, thank you very much for your work all this week. Appreciate it. Now let's go to our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas. Now, Iowa is a swing state, Craig, so it's regarded as quite an important trophy for these candidates. What happens if to everybody in the non-swing states, where it's all settled pretty much?
People don't pay any attention to them. You take a state like Louisiana, which is a Republican state. There is no Clinton campaign down there. There's not even an office. So if someone there has a question or has a problem that needs to be sorted out with voter registration or whatever, there's no one there to turn to because they've conceded that.
Your son.
Well, yeah, what happened to my son is a student at Tulane University. He registered to vote. There was some kind of problem. He went to contact the Clinton campaign to see if they could send people in to fix it. He couldn't reach anyone. Now, if that had happened to him in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, or Florida, a swing state, there would have been 15 guys over at Tulane University in 10 minutes and sorted this out.
Okay.
So the question is, you know, is the system rigged? Well, it depends how you...
Or is it just pragmatic?
Yeah.
All right, Craig, we're going to come back to you in a minute. But for a moment, let's take a quick break from the elections and take a look at some of the day's top business stories in 60 seconds. South Korean prosecutors have raided Samsung's offices as part of a probe into the nation's political scandal. The investigation is looking at whether Samsung gave $3.1 million to Choi Soon-sil, a friend of the country's president Park Geun-hye, to fund her daughter's sporting activities. Britain's Marks & Spencer says it will shut around 30 stores at home and 53 stores abroad as it attempts to revive its struggling business. The company aims to focus more on food and less on its clothing ranges. The 132-year-old retailer's shares have dipped 22% so far this year, while profits have crashed 88% compared to a year ago. And Iran has sealed its first major international energy deal since sanctions were lifted earlier this year. Iran's national oil company has signed a preliminary $6 billion deal with France's Total and China's CNPC to help develop a giant gas field in the Gulf. Well, let's take a look at how Wall Street is seeing these elections now. The S&P and the Dow are up about 0.5%. The Nasdaq is up about 1 full percentage point there. Well, on Monday, the last full trading session before the election, the major US indices all closed up about 2%. Now, stocks had been falling for at least 9 days leading up to this election, all the uncertainty. So what's inspired the latest rally? Mobeen Nasir takes a look in this report.
Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Voters in America may be divided, but investors have a clear favorite. US markets spiked on the final day of trade before the presidential elections. That's because the latest polls suggest Hillary Clinton will win. Yet there's no consensus she'll be better for business than her billionaire rival. In fact, it's the Republican candidate who's promising to lower taxes that should boost profits for companies. And Hillary's support for renewables could drive down oil prices, while Trump's anti-Iran rhetoric may take them the other way. And both candidates plan tougher regulations for big pharmaceutical companies and the banks. How their policies affect Wall Street will only be known once the new president takes office. So what have the candidates said that makes smart money prefer one over the other?
That I will exercise the greatest care and responsibility in all of the powers invested in the office of the presidency.
When we win on November 8th, we are going to drain the swamp.
Investors hate uncertainty, and Hillary Clinton seems to be the more predictable candidate. But the dust over America's economic future won't settle with the outcome of this election.
No matter who wins the White House, the Senate is likely to remain quite split.
Stocks had been tumbling for days leading up to the elections. Tuesday's cautious recovery shows nobody's willing to put money on the outcome just yet. Mubin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, we have our reporter Iolo at Dafydd in New York keeping an eye on exactly this subject. Iolo, take it away for us.
Well, I was on Wall Street on Monday, and yes, the rally was there for some of the markets and after some 9 days of uncertainty. But I'm not the expert on this. Let's talk to a real expert, which is Max Wolff from at 55 Capital, a market strategist. Now then, does that rally mean that you guys in the money markets, you see this slightly different even before or as people are voting now?
Absolutely. So we've been very nervous about two things. One, not knowing who's going to win, and two, not knowing what happens in this election. So unusual for us to not know what happens with the election. Usual, we don't know who wins before they win, but we usually have a pretty much blind and bottomless faith that it'll be a smooth and pretty easy transition, and that faith has been rattled. So we're worried about two things, and we don't like not knowing one thing, let alone two things. Two things to worry about made 9 days down, a little bit less to worry about made 300 points up.
So that was part of the reason for the rally. Now then, if Clinton does win, and some people seem to suggest that the Electoral College at least seems to favor her, then won't the money markets and you guys dealing with money, won't you be worried because she is talking about raising taxes, she is talking about putting more burden on big business?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, there's a lot of things to worry about. One is whether or not the person will do what they say, and the other thing is what they say. So everyone in the market sees the Clinton presidency, a likely Clinton presidency, as a continuation of the Obama presidency, which was unbelievably good times for Wall Street. It was happy times for folks who run money and happier times for folks whose money they run, so it was not a disaster. Also, we don't like not knowing. So while some of the things that Trump said were more potentially exciting to investors about lower taxes or regulation, there was no track record to bank on, and President Trump would be a president who was never a mayor or a governor or a senator or a representative, so it would really be all de novo, starting from zero, and we don't like that.
And that's despite Donald Trump saying all along, look, this is going to be great for America if I become the next president because I'm going to lower taxes, I'm going to increase the amount of jobs that come in. And you're saying that actually what? The money markets don't believe him.
Yeah, well, there's no real reason for us to believe him, right? So we love the idea, but he's never done it before. He's never been a politician before. And quite frankly, every candidate thinks they're the best. If you don't have a big ego, you don't go into that business. And if you don't say you're going to make things better, then nobody shows up at your rallies. So everyone says they're going to do jobs. Everybody says they're going to do a great job. Certainly, he wasn't shy in that area, but if we bet on everyone being 100% truthful in everything they say, we'd be fired and we'd deserve it.
Max Wolff, thank you very much indeed. Max Wolff, a market strategist. So obviously, confidence, I think, rising because they think that Hillary Clinton will be the next president. Matt.
Okay, Iolo in New York, thank you very much. Now we are back with our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas. Craig, I have a little riddle for you. What does Donald Trump have in common with Grexit, Brexit and terrorism? Think back to earlier this year when he was compared to some of those.
All three people involved in those incidents wear wigs?
No, the Economist Intelligence Unit ranked Donald Trump right up there with all those global threats to the global economy. And I have to ask you, why would they put him up there with all those sort of things when he's a billionaire, he's a successful businessman? Why is he a so-called threat to the global economy?
Someone who people don't understand is always a threat. And that's why Donald Trump is a threat. You can't overestimate the importance of Trump being the first outsider of the political system in American history to actually make this kind of an impact. As he would say, this is huge.
Huge.
Just the fact that he's there. And what worries people is that he is not acting on this in a manner that befits the office. I mean, this morning he was complaining that if he doesn't win, he felt it he would have been a waste of his time and a loss of money.
And he's always going on about the election being rigged.
And effort, where frankly, if you are nominated to be a candidate for President of the United States, sorry, Donaldo, this is a great honor. And you should treat it as such. And
okay, so you're saying you should play the political game, and he's saying no.
Well, no, it's not a political game, Matthew. No, it's not a political game.
Okay.
If you are running for President of the United States of America, that is something special that's reserved for very few people in history. And it should be approached with a sort of serious and grace. There's no grace in Trump.
Okay.
That's really what it is.
All right. Okay, Craig, we're going to come back to you very soon, but first we're going to get some more market reaction, this time from Asia. Patrick Fox sent us this report from Singapore.
Well, if Wall Street's strong finish on Monday was an indication Hillary Clinton is winning the race to the White House, share activity in Asia may be an indication it'll be a tighter finish than many people expect, with markets around the region closing slightly mixed on Tuesday. Although negative trade data out of China and a downbeat business survey by National Australia Bank put a dampener on sentiment as well. Sydney did nevertheless manage to eke out some small gains, with the SX 200 closing 0.1% higher. Japan's Nikkei 225 ended down a fraction as the yen strengthened slightly against the greenback. Elsewhere, Chinese shares outperformed the region, with the Shanghai Composite adding close to 0.5%. Meantime, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also rose about 0.5%. Investors there looking past the negative trade data and betting on a Clinton win. Also getting a check on South Korea's Kospi. It edged up around 0.25%. Samsung Electronics was in focus after its offices were raided as part of a probe into a scandal involving President Park Geun-hye. Its share price actually ended about 0.25% higher today, but could be in for a rough ride if the company is implicated in any way.
Now let's take a look at how the election is impacting tech companies. I'm joined live by Rich Jaroslovsky. He's from San Francisco. He is the Vice President for Content and Chief Journalist at the mobile app service SmartNews. Rich, thank you for joining us on Money Talks once again on this very important day. What do all the smart people in Silicon Valley make of this election? Who do they want?
I think the vast majority of people in Silicon Valley want Clinton to win, even though Trump's economic policies or his tax policies might benefit them more personally. I think that when they look at the broader picture and look at the potential impact of a Trump presidency on their businesses, they're very afraid. And I think that with only a couple notable exceptions, people in the Valley are pulling for Clinton.
What are you talking about, Rich? I mean, are you talking about when Trump says he's going to bring jobs back from China to the United States, and it could affect companies like Apple, which use, Chinese workers to make their phones? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that's quite possible in terms of Trump's suspicion of free trade. But I think maybe even a bigger issue for Silicon Valley is Trump's approach to immigration. If Clinton gets elected, and particularly if she gets a Democratic Senate to work with, that does open at least a potential path to some sort of meaningful immigration reform, which has been a huge issue in Silicon Valley for years now. If Trump is elected, not only does it foreclose any chance of serious immigration reform, but it also probably makes the situation considerably worse, given Trump's suspicion of Muslims, given his endorsement of a major attempt to restrict immigration into the U.S. Silicon Valley is very concerned about attracting and keeping high-tech knowledge workers, people who are highly skilled, who are entrepreneurs from around the world. That's the lifeblood of Silicon Valley. And anything that threatens to choke that flow off is something that the Valley would be very, very concerned about.
Rich, I have a question for you from one of your old colleagues, a guy called Craig Copetas. You may remember him. Go for it, Craig.
I know him. Craig. Look, Rich, a question here. Immigration has been such an issue, whether it's legal, illegal, whatever. There's been a lot of talk that a lot of the Silicon Valley companies were founded by immigrants, like Google. Question is this: as you're looking 10, 20 years down the road in the tech world, do you see the developments in the United States happening in the United States or coming in from places like China, Europe, and elsewhere?
Well, the United States and Silicon Valley in particular, for it to thrive, it has to be a magnet. It has to draw the best and brightest from around the world. And that's really been the key to its success over the last 30 years, and it will be the key to its success over the next 30 years. There's a critical mass in Silicon Valley of high-tech companies. The educational infrastructure there, particularly around Stanford University, and venture capital. Anything that impedes the flow of capital, that impedes the flow of high-tech and highly skilled people, is going to spell disaster for Silicon Valley in the long term.
Yeah, but you know, in Silicon Valley, Rich. Again, looking 10 years down the future, is it going to be past its sell-by date? Is there going to be a new Silicon Valley like in China, Italy, wherever? Or is it always going to be Silicon Valley?
It'll always be Silicon Valley as long as the United States embraces the policies that made Silicon Valley great.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've had conversations with people from other countries who tell me, oh, we're going to replicate what Silicon Valley does. We're going to build Silicon Desert or Silicon something else, Silicon Beach. And somehow those things, by and large, have not come to pass. It's the policies of the United States and the critical mass of capital, education, and the high-tech companies that have made Silicon Valley great.
And of course, Stanford University, even though they don't have a good football team, right, Rich?
Pardon me?
And of course, Stanford University, even though they have a bad football team.
Well, it's not as good a football team.
All right, Rich Jaroslovsky in San Francisco. Thank you so much for your analysis on that strange and petty aside. We are going to leave it. I'm just
strange and petty? How dare you, sir?
That just sums you up
Go
perfectly,
back to
Craig.
England. Go cover your soccer.
Now, listen, Craig. No, look, we'll come back to you now. And you did bring to my attention this little clip from one campaign ago. Let's have a listen.
Yeah.
Obama.
You got Obama phone?
Yes, everybody in Cleveland, low minority, got Obama phone. Keep Obama in president, you know. He gave us a phone.
He gave you a phone?
Do more.
How did he give you a phone?
You sign up if you on food stamps, you on Social Security, you got low income, you disability.
Craig, that was quite an arresting little clip there, but it does have a serious point to it. What
it shows the two sides, that people who are disadvantaged in the United States get free stuff from the United States, which is a good thing if they're disadvantaged, people who are in poverty. But what you saw there was, unfortunately, a black woman, sadly, exhibiting every stereotype racist America has about black people, saying, I've got a free Obama phone, thus making that divide even worse, in my opinion. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, just today, for instance, the Department of Labor Statistics issued new stats that said that there's close to 10 million more new government workers in the United States than in the manufacturing side. So what that means is that people working for the government don't make anything except bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy feeds stuff like, I want an Obama phone. And it was very clear on that people were taking advantage of this. So again, this attempt to make things equitable, it's just poorly managed, and that's where you see the divide.
I guess what you're trying to say is the politicians are being cynical as always. Okay, well, Craig Copetas, thank you very much. You're going to be with us the whole evening for the election, but from us on Money Talks, that is it. The race to the White House is now almost over, but it's been a long one, and it took quite a few ugly turns. Here are some of the highlights and the lowlights.
She lied when she said she didn't call it the gold standard in one of the debates. She totally lied.
So he goes around with crocodile tears about how terrible it is.
You were very much involved. Excuse me. My turn. She has tremendous hate in her heart. And when she said deplorables, she meant it. And when she said irredeemable, they're irredeemable.
You know, it's not okay to insult people. It's not okay.